All right, welcome back to the channel. Errol Spence lets it be known in no uncertain terms that he wants Canelo Alvarez, and that 160 pounds fight with Canelo Alvarez is not going to be any problem whatsoever. Let's talk about that and how that might affect the Terrence Crawford fight in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Errol Spence Jr. basically says he wants or calls to people and lets them know that he very much wants the Canelo Alvarez fight. And he believes that he will not have any problems with Canelo Alvarez at 160 pounds. So, because he says, look, I already have a real hard time making 147 pounds. So 160 pounds, that's something that is much more comfortable for him. So he feels like he can move up and make the weight. If you've checked it out, Canelo Alvarez and Errol Spence Jr. are roughly the same height. And matter of fact, I think Errol Spence Jr. might actually be a little bit taller than Canelo Alvarez. I would have to look at the reach, but as far as the stature of the guys, of the height and the reach and all that, very, very similar. Canelo Alvarez is not in stature a lot bigger than Errol Spence Jr. And if you look at Errol Spence Jr., Canelo Alvarez started at 154 pounds, and Errol Spence Jr. started at 154 pounds. So I don't really think that it is. I don't think that that's that much of a stretch. And there have been guys that move from 147 pounds and beat guys at 160 pounds. Obviously, guys like Sugar Ray Leonard, guys like Sugar Ray Robinson, obviously, Thomas Hearns, Roberto Duran, I do believe, came from 135 pounds and got all the way up to 60 and beat Iran Barkley for a middleweight title. So that just tells you, dude, that this is something that is very, very reasonable. And I don't think that it is something that is a big stretch. Now, the reason why I think that it is such a big fight is because of a couple reasons. One, I think that this is something that not too far from now very well may happen, because it is, I'm not being Nostradamus here. Two of the biggest right now, if you don't count Deontay Wilder, who lost his fight to Tyson Fury, and just say, because I do believe Deontay Wilder is still that level of fighter. But if you take Deontay Wilder out of the equation and you look at just the rest of the American fighters, the biggest American fighter, hottest selling American fighter, is Errol Spence Jr. And then who's the hottest selling Mexican fighter? Obviously, that's Canelo Alvarez. And these guys are roughly the same size. It's a fight that, people will see. And because Canelo Alvarez is in a situation now with all this stuff going on in the zone, where it is known that he wants to get out of there, that, this is something, there's a situation where that is not unreasonable, where Canelo Alvarez might wind up being with the PBC and in not too long a time. And for people to say, oh no, that's not possible, where does Manny Pacquiao reside right now? Who promoted Manny Pacquiao's last two fights? And do you think that would have been possible? Do you think anybody other these other people would have said that was possible back a year, even when during the time of Jeff Horn versus Manny Pacquiao, nobody would have believed that was possible. So Canelo Alvarez most definitely can wind up back in the PBC, which that's pretty much where he started. Many of his biggest fights to begin with were against people. So it is quite obvious, just from what I said, that Errol Spence Jr. #1 is one of the most, if not the most popular American star, other than Deontay Wilder, who's right now coming off of a loss. So there you go, big star, lives in Dallas, can fight, has a neighborhood stadium around him with 50,000 people that can be packed in there, in a state that used to be part of Mexico. That ain't rocket science, man. That is peanut butter and chocolate, literally. You know what I mean? When you're talking about that level, when you're talking about that scenario. Now, That's why I said it was very important to understand that there is a very reasonable argument. And I'll say it this way. I'm not going to say, oh, well, this guy deserves to be here. This guy deserves to be there in the pound for pound list. Let me say it this way. It is a reasonable argument to be made that Errol Spence Jr. is the number one pound for pound guy if he's able to beat Danny Garcia. Because if you look at his last 6 fights over the last 2 years and compare that to the other people that are at the top of that list or anybody in boxing, his record of competition is much higher than many other people's are, including Canelo Alvarez. Though I understand that there's many people that disagree and believe that Canelo Alvarez is the number one pound for pound fighter now that Vasily Lomachenko lost. Or you might have had him there before. But at the very least, you must admit that if he beats Danny Garcia, definitely coming off that injury, dude, that guy is a top 3, top 4 pound for pound, if not top 2, top 3 pound for pound fighter in the world, who's in the same general weight class as the quote unquote biggest cash cow in boxing, and he's one of the biggest cash cows in boxing. Dude, that has the making up of Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Manny Pacquiao. And you can choose who you think Mayweather Jr. is in that scenario. You can say Canelo's the Mayweather Jr. or Errol Spence Jr. is the Mayweather Jr. because of the status. But it doesn't matter. That is a huge fight. Huge fight like that, man. Huge fight. And now imagine that also, because Errol Spence Jr. did not say that he wanted to fight Canelo Alvarez before or instead of Terrence Crawford. But if you imagine in the best case scenario, which honestly really isn't even necessary for my previous points that I made, but it would make it better if Errol Spence Jr. beat Terrence Crawford and then moved up and fought Canelo Alvarez at 160 pounds. But I'll tell you this, the boost that he would get from fighting Terrence Crawford is not big enough to hold up that fight right now. Because all Errol Spence Jr., he goes and beats the Puerto Rican champion, Danny Garcia, right? And then he goes and fights the top guy at 160 pounds. He skips a weight class for a Canelo Alvarez fight. Dude, that's absolutely monstrous. That's huge. So, I think that is something, and I've said this for a while, something that could definitely happen and most likely should happen, but I don't want to say that it shouldn't happen before the Terrence Crawford fight. But now look, that's why I said that was the importance of Errol Spence Jr. Being number one pound for pound. Now there's something else. If Errol Spence, and I know some people can say that Canelo Alvarez is already this. I don't believe that he is, but there's many people that you can make a reasonable argument that he is one of the big, if he's not the biggest sports star in the world, because of that contract that DAZN didn't pay out on. But hey, on paper, one of the biggest paid dudes in all of sports. However, if from Errol Spence Jr.'s perspective, if Errol Spence Jr., and I do believe, before I get there, the A side is Canelo. I do understand that, but it is definitely a 55-45 split over there if they do that in Dallas, Texas. However, to get the fight done, give the dude the A side, all that. But if Errol Spence Jr. wins, better believe it, he becomes one of the biggest sports stars in the world. Out of the state of Texas, which might as well be its own country, with 3 major metropolitan areas in more than 3 probably, right? The Austin area, the San Antonio area, which could consider, be kind of close, but Dallas, Texas, Houston, you got Corpus Christi, man, it's a huge state. El Paso out west, shout out to my man from El Paso. It's a huge state, man. It's a huge fight. So as far as that relates to Terrence Crawford, though, dude, that's why I think it's so important that Terrence Crawford fight somebody that is major competition, because if he does that, then he gets to be, if he doesn't do that, then dude, just this route is there. Manny Pacquiao is there for Errol Spence. Sean Porter is there for Errol Spence. Canelo Alvarez is there for Errol Spence. Hey, dude, don't miss your payday, bud. Got to get a case of act right. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace. And sorry for the stuffed up nose. I've got allergies, and it's just what it is. The channel keeps pressing. Peace.